Good morning. It's great to be back in London. I was supposed to be here 5 years ago, but finally we made it happen. These days, when I look around, AI is all across the headlines. I just collected a few of the things when I searched for, what is going on, and some of them honestly just kind of triggered me. So here's this one from Microsoft CEO saying that 30% of all code is written by AI. And at that point, I was talking with people like, what does that even mean? Like, is this big or anyway, it's a CEO clearly talking up their own product, right? Like Microsoft is interested in selling. Then we have a few months ago, Anthropic CEO saying all code will be generated in a year, or he also said things like in 3 to 6 months, 90% of all code will be written by AI. Again, this is an AI company, founder, very much interested in this. And then we also had Jeff Dean, an engineer actually, a chief scientist said at Google, saying that AI could be at the level of junior coder in a year. And again, all these headlines are from executives at large companies. But on the other hand, when I look at the ground reality, there are some things that don't really match these really positive and really enthusiastic predictions. So for example, this is from January. This is a software engineer at a startup saying that they use this tool called Devin, which costs $500 a month, autonomous AI agent, and added a bug, and it cost them $700 extra because of all the 6 million pulse hog events. So clearly, like AI is not, we know this, by the way, right? Like the bugs will make it through, but this is just a good example of, yes, it's not that great. And then there was this Reddit thread that went absolutely viral. After Microsoft's Build conference, some of you are laughing, you read this. After Microsoft's Build conference, Microsoft showed how they released the Copilot agents in the .NET code base. And Microsoft engineers were really trying too hard to help this agent land a fix in a production, a really complex code base, a .NET code base, and they failed spectacularly. So for example, the agent would add tests that break, engineers would prompt them to break it, and there's a lot of laughing going around. Now, on one hand, I do appreciate that Microsoft was really transparent about this. No other startup has shown their agents do like this, but again, we see that this thing is just really limited. So there's a big disconnect. We have the executives talking about one thing and the other. But then I look back to my thinking and writing and research, and in the last just month or 2 months, the last couple of deep dives on the Pragmatic Engineer have all been related to AI, I just realized, on how Cursor was built, on what vibe coding means for us professional software engineers, how these Microsoft tools work or don't work, how ChatGPT images was built and scaled. And for this event, I just want to pause a little bit and just get a temperature check of what is really happening. Like there's extremes here with CEOs, there's other extremes where like it doesn't work at all, and what is really happening. So I happen to talk to a lot of software engineers. Like this is the perk of being and staying a software engineer. I mean, I do write a lot about it, but I try to stay close to the ground. So I just ask them, how are you using AI tools at your company? And I ask for different types of kind of companies and categories. And I asked this from a couple of AI dev tool startups who are, selling this thing. So you would expect that they are really all in. I asked some of big tech companies, some AI startups that are not selling AI tools, but they're building AI tools, and some independent software engineers. So let's start with the AI dev tool startups. First, I talked with the team at Anthropic. I just did it over last week. And I asked them, hey, what are you seeing? Like, again, let's keep in mind they will be biased necessarily, right? But this is what they told me. When we gave Claude Code access to our engineers, they all started using it every day, which is pretty surprising. Now, this was months and months ago. Claude Code was released in public 1 month ago, but this was internally. But they said they saw a really big pull immediately. Claude Code is a command line interface. It's not an IDE. It works in a terminal. And they also told me that 90% of Claude Code, the product, is written with Claude Code, which seems obscenely high. You would think this is kind of an advertisement. But again, I did talk with engineers, and engineers aren't exactly the ones who make things up. Now, Anthropic also told me something interesting. They launched Claude Code less than a month ago, I think May 22nd, so like 3 weeks ago. And they said on day one, they had a 40% increase in usage. And since the launch, in less than a month, there's been 160% increase. This just means they're seeing a pull for this product for whatever reason. Now, one more thing that Anthropic has started, actually, this thing called MCP, the Model Context Protocol. I won't go into all the details. I have a deep dive on it, and you can find a lot of articles. But the idea is that you can have MCP clients that can be your IDE or agents, and you have a protocol, and you can kind of connect things like your database, like GitHub, Google Drive, Puppeteer, whatever you want to. I actually used it to connect it to my database, so one of my APIs, and I can now chat with it. I say like, hey, how many people have claimed this promo code that I have an API for, and it kind of creates sequels. It's pretty neat. So it is a fun way of, an interesting way of doing it. And then Anthropic was telling me that they open sourced this protocol in November. In December and February, a few smaller companies and scale-ups adopted it. In March and April, the big guns, OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, all added support. And today, they're estimating there's thousands of MCP servers happening. And we'll see a little bit later on why this is relevant. Now, I also talk with Windsurf, another AI IDE editor. And I was asking their team what they're seeing, and they said they see 95% of their code is being written using Windsurf, so either their agent or their passive tabbing. Now, I mean, this sounds awfully high, and I'm a bit surprised. But again, this is what they're seeing. Again, don't forget they're going to they're going to be dog fooding these companies. Finally, I reached out to Cursor, and they told me that about 40 or 50%. They didn't have as exact, but they're like, that's kind of roughly what it feels. They're a bunch of it works, but a bunch of it doesn't. Again, these are the companies that want to get to 100% because that's what they're selling, right? So, okay, not too surprising that it's as high as is. I do appreciate the honesty from Cursor, by the way. So, now on to big tech. Yeah. Here, I talk with people anonymously. So at Google, I talk with about 5 different engineers. And so first thing that we need to know about Google is everything is custom there. They don't use Kubernetes. They open source Kubernetes, but they have something called Borg. They don't use GitHub. They have their own repository. They have their own critique code review tool and so on. And their IDE is called CIDR, which is an acronym for something integrated development environment and repository. It's also a cloud integrated development environment and repository. It used to be a web tool. Today, it's a VS Code fork, and it is integrated across all the Google stacks. All their internal services are integrated, and it works really, really nicely inside of Google. Now, engineers told me that AI is just everywhere. LLMs have been integrated into CIDR, the IDE, the VS Code fork that they use, the web version called CIDR V. They have autocomplete. They have a chat-based IDE. They said it works pretty good. Maybe not as good as, let's say, Cursor, but it's pretty good. Critique, their AI review tool, it gives you feedback, and they said it's sensible. It works. Code search, something that's apparently amazing inside Google, and again, it has LLM support. You can ask about stuff, and it spits out parts of the code base. And I've heard there's been a lot of progress. So a former Googler who left Google about 6 months ago said that about a year ago, it was just weird how all of this was not really used inside of Google, but now it is. So things have just evolved pretty quickly. And a current software engineer told me that they think Google internally has this really slow approach where they're taking a cautious approach. They want to get things right so that engineers stick with it, that they don't mistrust it. Also, Google has a bunch of other tools that, again, these are coming from engineers. NotebookLM, this is a product we can all use as well. You can just put docs and chat with them. LLM Prompt Playground, which is like OpenAI's Dev Playground, but Google apparently built it internally before OpenAI released it. They have this thing called the MoMA search engine, a knowledge base using LLMs, and engineers are using it all the time. And a lot more are being built. Now, this is a quote from a Googler who will definitely not be on the record with their name, but they say, there's an org-specific Gen AI tooling happening everywhere because that's what leadership would like to see. And honestly, that's how you get more funding these days. Now, if you work in a large organization, you can see this is true, but this is probably also deliberate. Like, this is how tools like NotebookLM have been built inside of Google, a team just funding it and building it. So that's Google. And one really interesting thing that really got my attention, this is from a former SRE who is really good friends with a bunch of Google SRE people. They said, what I'm hearing from my SRE friends at Google is they are preparing for 10 times the lines of code making their way into production. So they're beefing up their infra, their deployment pipelines, their code review tooling, feature flagging, all of these things. This was really, really interesting. What is Google seeing that we might not be aware of? Amazon. I also talked with engineers here, and Amazon is not really known as well for AI, but apparently, internally, almost all devs are using this tool called Amazon Q Developer Pro. It's really good for AWS-related coding. In fact, the Amazon devs who talked to me said they're really surprised that people outside of Amazon don't really know about it. So apparently, if you're doing anything with AWS, it's really good with the context. And they just like it. Again, 6 months ago when I talked with people, they were not that enthusiastic. And a year ago, they're like, it doesn't really work that well, Q. But now it does. And engineers also told me they use Claude for everything. This engineer was telling me how when they have to write a PR FAQ, which is Amazon 6-pager, or kind of press release, they use it a lot for it. Perf season apparently has, this engineer did a lot of it with that, and just with a lot of writing tasks. Amazon has a relationship with Anthropic, so they have an internal Claude. And one interest, with Amazon, the most interesting thing with MCP servers, we mentioned how Anthropic came up with MCP servers. Now, let me take just a little bit of detour about how Amazon is this massive API company. In 2002, based on, this is how Steve Yegi, a former Amazon engineer and well-known person in the industry, summarized what happened there. Jeff Bezos had this big mandate. It went along these lines. 1, all teams will expose their data and functionality through service interfaces, aka APIs. 2, teams must communicate with each other through these interfaces. 3, there will be no forward or forward inter-process connection allowed. And I think 4 was something like, if you don't do this, you're fired. But Amazon has done this, and internally, this is how AWS was partially born as well. All their services that they use internally, they can expose externally because they have all these APIs. They've been doing this for more than 20 years. And if you have a service with an API, it is trivial to bolt on an MCP server so your ID or your AI agents can use it. And this is Amazon what is doing. This is, I've never heard this before until I talk with this person, and you're probably the first one to hear this, but most internal tools and website inside Amazon already have MCP support. Automation is happening everywhere. So people were telling me, devs were telling me that they're automating ticketing system, emails, internal systems, and devs are loving it. Some of them are automating a huge part of their workflow. Again, no one's talking about it, but it's happening. So I wonder if Amazon, by being API first since actually that's 2002, apologies for the typo, they might be MCP first starting in 2025. With big tech out of the way, I wanted to talk to some smaller startups that have no real pull for the AI dev tools themselves. They do have a pull for AI. And I talked with a startup called Incident.io. They didn't start as an AI startup. They started as an on-call platform. But with AI, it's kind of an obvious place to integrate and have resolution and all that. So now they're turning it to pretty much AI first. And I talked with Lawrence Jones, who will later be doing a talk at LDX3. And he said that our team is massively using AI to accelerate them. And they share tips and tricks in the Slack. And he just generously shared a few of these with me. So one of them is an engineer saying, hey, I just used another MCP server for the first time, and it works really well for well-defined tickets. So this engineer realized, oh, if you have a really well-defined ticket, you can pass it to an agent, and they can come up with a first pass, and sometimes it's pretty good. And they just share this to the chat saying, hey, this works for me. Why don't you try it, see what you think? And there's a lot of chatter, and they're sharing all of these things. A second example is another engineer saying that their new favorite trick is prompting to ask for options. For example, can you give me options for writing a code that does this and this that I need to do? What do you think I'm seeing this error? Can you give me explanations? How would you train the prompt? And so on. And what I really love about this is inside of the company, they're experimenting. They're seeing it works for me. Do you think it works for you? And you can see the the reaction, discussion, etc. There's a lot more examples, but they're really coming around to it. And Lawrence closed with this. They said the biggest change has been from Claude Code, just released again 3 weeks ago. I just checked yesterday, so this was on Sunday, and their entire team are regular users. Again, this is no affiliation with any of the vendors, but they're starting to use startups. Now, I also talked with a biotech AI startup who asked not to be named, and I'll tell you why in a second. They do really cool stuff. They use AI and ML models to design proteins. They've been founded 3 years ago. They have a team of about 50 to 100 people. They have a lot of automated numerical pipelines built on Kubernetes. They're using Python tons and so on. And an engineer told me this. We've experimented with several LLMs, but none of it has really stuck. It's still faster for us to write the correct code than to review the LLM code that will have fix all its problems. And this is even using the latest models, even using like Sonnet 3.7 or maybe even Sonnet 4. Given the hype around LLMs, I think we might just be in a weird niche. And this is why this engineer didn't want to give their name to this. They're like, we don't want to be the AI skeptic, but it's true that there are really fast-moving startups that are experimenting, but it's just not working for them. Like they're trying it, it doesn't work, they move on. Again, they tried AI code review tools, and they're kind of using it on and off, but it's just not a thing for them. Again, don't forget they're building novel software, right? Like this has never been built before, so just keep that in mind. So having gone through startups, I just wanted to turn to a few independent software engineers, people who have been accomplished before AI. They've done a bunch of cool stuff, and they love coding. Like it just they love the craft. So first I turned to Armin Ronacher, who is the creator of the Flask framework at Python. He was a founding engineer at Sentry. And he just recently left Sentry to just maybe do a startup. He's been coding for 17 years. A really nice coder. And he got really excited about AI development recently. So he published this article just a few weeks ago saying AI changes everything. And he wrote, I'm quoting the highlighted text, if you would have told me even 6 months ago that I prefer being an engineering lead to a virtual programmer intern, aka an agent, I would have not believed it. So I asked him, like, what's changed? Like, you love coding. Like, why are you into this whole agent stuff? And he told me a few things. First, Claude Code got really good. I don't know if you're seeing a trend here, by the way. There's zero affiliation here, and this is not any sort of advert for anything. He also said by using LLMs extensively, he got through this hurdle of not accepting it. And most importantly, he said that the faults of the model, hallucination, are avoided because the tool just runs itself and sees the results and it gets feedback. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. Let me talk with Peter Steinberger. He is the creator of PSPDF Kit. He is an iOS junkie. He is inside iOS internals. He has strong opinions about the API changes. PSPDF Kit was one of the, I think it's still the most popular kind of PDF-related iOS tool. And he sold his startup, I think, a year and a half ago or so. And he's been tinkering on the side. And he didn't really do much. And then, again, he published an article that caught my mind. And in it, he said, the spark returns. I haven't been this excited, astounded, and amazed by technology in a very long time. So I reached out to him and I said, hey, Pete, what has changed? And he told me he feels there's some inflection point where it just works. As an iOS junkie, who loves Objective-C and to some extent Swift, he told me that languages and frameworks just matter less because it's so easy to switch. He's now coding in, TypeScript and other languages I don't think he would have touched because of these tools. And he's saying that a capable engineer can just have a lot more output. And then he posted this on social media, actually sent this over to me. He's saying that all his tech friends are just in awe and have trouble going to sleep. And it's such a mind-blowing technology. And it's kind of ironic because we exchanged messages with him at 5 a.m. when I was already awake for some other reason, and he was awake coding. And another engineer said that he's seeing a lot of burnt-out developers come back into the field to create stuff. So I now reached out to Brigitte, who is also doing a talk here at LDX3. She's a distinguished engineer at ThoughtWorks, and she's been very thoughtful about exploring, understanding what works and what doesn't in AI. She's methodological. I love her articles. She does a bunch of them. You should check them out. And I asked her her take, and she said that she feels that LLMs are this tool that we can use it at any abstraction level. And this is the difference. We can now create low code like assembly, high-level languages, or even human language if we want to. She thinks that this is like a lateral move. Like it's not just a new layer on top of it. It's like across the stack, and this is what makes LLMs really exciting. Again, this is someone who's been thinking about LLMs for quite a while and very accomplished engineer before LLMs. Finally, I turn to Simon Willison. He is the creator of Django, an independent software engineer, and he's been blogging on the side for like 23 years. Andre Karpathy, co-founder of OpenAI, posted this just a few days ago, saying he loves his blog and reads almost everything. And Simon's blog is known as the LLM blog because he's been tinkering with, since ever ChatGPT came out, on what works and what doesn't. Again, really good writing. So I asked Simon, how would you summarize the state of Gen AI tooling? And again, Simon is as independent as can be. Like, he has an open source project. He makes enough from that and from donations to the blog. Like, that's his income stream. And this is what Simon told me. He said, coding agents actually work. You can run in a loop, do compilers and all that stuff. And the model improvements in the last 6 months have been some sort of tipping point, and now it's becoming useful. So to sum it up, this is roughly what I've heard. AI dev tool startups do heavy usage, not too surprising. Big tech is very heavy investment and growing usage. AI startups, maybe a hit or miss. Some are using it, some are not. Independent software engineers, they're a lot more enthusiastic than before. This is interesting. But there are still a bunch of questions left. As I was looking through, like, it doesn't feel to me like the slam dunk of, oh, the future is here. Not at all. And I'm going to give you 4 of my questions. Number 1, why is it that founders and CEOs are far more excited than engineers? Now, some of the engineers that we've seen who are excited, like Armin and Peter, they will probably be founders themselves. And here's an example of Zach Lloyd, who is the founder of Warp. This is an AI terminal, so kind of an AI dev tool, if you will. And he's saying, anyone else having a hard time that their most senior engineers are not really using AI, and the most enthusiastic adopters are the founder, the PM, and this is from an AI tooling company. It is an interesting question. I see this all the time. And also, if you remember the headline from CEOs, from public CEOs, they're super enthusiastic about it. Why is that? I don't know. Number 2 is how mainstream or niches AI usage across devs. Hands up if you're using any AI tools for coding or software engineering for at least once a week. So I'm kind of seeing roughly like 60, 70% of the room go up. And this is data that I've gotten from DX, who ran a survey of 38,000 devs recently. They're seeing that the median organization has about 50%. 5 out of 10 use it on a weekly basis, and not daily. This is weekly. And the very top companies have 6 out of 10. So on one end, I mean, this is amazing, given that this technology didn't exist 3 years ago, but it's not really the story that I've told you, right? So most of the stories you just heard, they are all above the median, except for maybe that unnamed AI biotech startup. So just keep that in mind. The reality is, and maybe there's a selection bias. Maybe the ones who are using it are more willing to talk about it. Number 3, how much time do we save? So, Peter or Pete told me that he thinks output is 10 to 20x more. But then DX did this survey, and they found that on a weekly basis, estimations are maybe 3 to 5 hours, maybe 4 hours. I mean, okay, 4 hours saved is pretty good, but that's not 10x, even on a 40-hour work week. And what do we do with that time? Like, do we produce anything more? I don't know. Finally, why does it work so much better for individuals and teams? We see this all the time, and Laura Toscher from DX told me the same thing. These tools are great for individual developers, but not yet good at the org level. So in summary, I'm not really surprised to see the CEOs and founders, especially for AI-related companies, to be so enthusiastic. It's kind of like, their financials are the line. Big tech investing into AI, kind of makes sense. Startups experimenting with AI tools also makes sense. But what makes me pay the most attention is the experienced engineers who have been around for a long time. They find a lot more success, and they want to use them more. My sense is that we are seeing some sort of step change happen in how we build software looking ahead. And I reached out to Martin Fowler and asked his take on this on a piece that he reviewed. And this is what he said. These are his words. He said, I think the appearance of LLMs will change software development to similar level to when we went from the assembler to high-level programming languages. After the high-level programming languages, the newer ones didn't really add a step change of productivity compared to the assembler. But he's saying that he thinks that LLMs will give us the same kind of productivity boost than going from assembly to high-level languages did, except these things are non-deterministic for the first time in computing, and this is a big difference. And so I turned to a veteran software engineer who is still alive and coding and is doing it for 52 years, Ken Beck. We have a long conversation on the podcast. And Ken told me this really interesting statement that I had a hard time believing. He said, I'm having more fun programming than I ever had in 52 years. My first question was like, Ken, is someone telling you to say this? Or someone he's like, no, he's just doing his side projects. And he's having more fun because he got a bit tired of learning new technologies again and again and moving and migrating to new frameworks. And he said that the LLMs really help him just be really ambitious. And he's now building a small talk server that he's always wanted to do that's going to run a bunch of parallel stuff and do a bunch of virtual computing. He's doing a small talk, a language server to integrate it into tools, all these things. And I asked Kent, how do you compare LLMs to all the technologies changes through your lifetime? And he said, I've seen something like this before. In fact, a few things. One was microprocessors, going from mainframes to smaller computing, which was a huge shift. Apparently, developers had a hard time putting their heads around it. Number 2 was the internet, which I think we can all agree it changed the economy. And then the smartphones, they just changed how you can have live location and people spend a lot more online. And he's comparing it to these things. And this is what he closed. He said the whole landscape of what is cheap and what's expensive has just shifted. Things that we didn't do because we assumed were going to be expensive or hard just got ridiculously cheap. So we need to be trying things. So my takeaway is things are changing and we need to experiment more. I think we need to do more of what the startups are doing, try out what works, what doesn't, understand what is cheap, what is expensive. And I'm leaving you with this message. Thank you very much. I see you around the conference.